It's finally that time. Last night, the LA Valiant finally revealed their new roster over on Weeaboo, and oh man, it's about as bad as people expected. Apologies for taking so long to get this out, by the way. I really wanted to do my research for this one because I'm actually not just turning this into a normal news video, it's also going to be a how good is your team episode. I figured I might as well do both at once just so we can kind of save ourselves a little bit of time and some repetitiveness. But anyway, this roster ain't looking too hot, ladies and gentlemen. Here is their 2021 roster. Apologies in advance if I butcher any of these names, by the way. So the Valiant are rocking with Silver 3, NVM and Shou Cheng at tank, Molanran and Crystal at DPS, Hybe and WYA at support, and JP Cat and Hiko as their coaches. Let's go over each of these guys individually. Let's analyze how good each and every one of them could be, and kind of just give a basic profile overview of all of them for those of you who may not be familiar with these people. Let us begin with the tanks. So the Valiant have decided to go with a double main tank approach through Silver 3 and NVM. Silver 3 is who I expect to be the starter at least at day one. He played on the one winner for about a year, and given that half of this roster and one of the coaches is one winner based, it would probably make the most sense synergy-wise to start him. But the question is, will he be any good? Well, to be honest, your guess is as good as mine. He can play like a decent Ryan, Winston, or Orisa, maybe, but it's not like he comes from this widely successful team where everybody can't stop talking about him. That's the thing. Him and his team have shown very little relevance since the start of 2020. They've shown a second place finish and a top 4 finish in the past, so I suppose there is a little bit of upside. But with the team around him looking relatively weak, it's hard to expect a lot from him. I don't know if he'll be the worst player on the team or anything, but that's not really saying much given the circumstances. Regardless, he's probably going to be this team's starter at the very least. The reason I'm so convinced he'll be the starter is because of their other main tank, NVM. So the story with him is that he has not played Overwatch competitively since 2018. This guy is incredibly out of the loop. He retired right before the start of 2019, and he never really did anything insane back when he played either. Just a bunch of mediocre pushes and contenders, basically. Could he maybe play a certain thing better than Silver 3, like Wrecking Ball or something along those lines? I guess, but again, the bar is not set very high. How can you reasonably expect anything out of somebody who hasn't played this game competitively in 3 whole years? But hey, he must have done something to impress if he somehow made this team, right? Right, guys? Right? At least, well, I hope that's the case, because in all likelihood, they probably just had to resort to him because of lots of other people either turning down a contract offer or certain players being too expensive for one reason or another. I know that buyouts were a big problem in some cases, and from what I've heard, big-name players like Dia turned down offers. That just goes to show how much of a train wreck this year could turn out to be. Dia wanted to get back into the league so badly, but he decided to turn this offer down. But anyway, let's talk about Shou Cheng, who will be this team's one and only off-tank from the looks of it. I guess he used to play DPS before he switched to off-tank, but he converted a while back. He's kind of like the Chinese Bumper or Nevix in a way, I suppose. Shou Cheng might be the most promising tank player on this Valiant team. I know it's not saying much, but still. The fact that he comes from a more well-known Chinese contenders team makes me feel a bit more optimistic about him. That team's 2020 campaign was relatively solid. Their most notable achievements came through defeating Team CC in Season 2 and qualifying for the Asian Gauntlet. Pretty respectable overall. Most of the gameplay I've seen out of him is on Sigma, but he seemed pretty alright on it. Not like number 1 in the region or anything, but definitely serviceable. Given that he's a former DPS player, there's probably potential with a Zarya as well. However, potentially being one of the better players on the team might not mean that much in the grand scheme of things, because off-tank is a widely competitive position in the Asian region, so on paper he definitely trends towards the bottom, sadly. The DPS though, this is where things get a bit more interesting. The big elephant in the room to address is Crystal. Once again, somebody wants to give him a chance. I know a lot of people are not going to be happy to see him. He's not very respected in the West, I think that's pretty obvious, and I'm pretty sure China does not love him either at this point. After the stunt he pulled on the Spark in 2019, a lot of people are hoping to see him fail and are upset that he's even back here to begin with. And if you don't know what happened back then, I definitely recommend looking it up. It's not that all much to read. I'm not going to go over it in detail because it's not super important right now. Regardless of how you feel about the guy though, he is very talented, there's no doubt about it. If the Charge and now the Valiant are willing to sign him to their roster, clearly he is still worth signing from the talent department. He's a tremendous flex DPS player, but in all likelihood, this year he probably fulfills the hit scan duties full-time, or at least almost full-time, considering what his partner plays. But that's perfectly fine, I would say, because Crystal has already shown off his hit scan prowess multiple times in the past. He can play Tracer, he can play Widow, he can play McCree. The common consensus is that he is the best player on this team. And I agree 100%. He is the most proven and has the highest ceiling. If there is one guy who can help make the Valiant games more exciting, it has to be him. Since the whole Spark falling out happened, he's been grinding hard to make it back here. He's still Overwatch League caliber as far as most people are concerned. I just worry about his general reception to the public. A lot of people are going to hate on him big time, and understandably so, which could definitely affect his mindset in the long term. Now let's talk about Crystal's partner, the flex DPS player, Ron. He's more so known for his projectile characters. However, he also has experience playing Brig because of goats, and he used to be a tank back in the day actually, and the tank he commonly played was D.Va. So honestly, maybe he actually flexes onto off-tank every once in a while if Shou-Chang does not get the job done on D.Va. It would work out too because, as I've already established, Shou-Chang used to play DPS. It's doubtful something like this happens because it would be really weird, but I thought I'd bring it up since it doesn't feel completely far-fetched. Strictly thinking about Ron in the DPS department, in all likelihood he's going to be the second fiddle most of the time because Crystal looks like the clear-cut main playmaker of this team in my opinion. His impact as a result is going to be somewhat meta-dependent. Given the low expectations he has, if he can just have a nice game every once in a while, that would be good enough for me. Now we finish up the roster with their supports. The situation here is interesting to say the least. I want to get the weird one out of the way first because I still can't really believe it. So this team's main support is Hybe. What's so weird about this is that he has never, ever played main support up until now, I'm pretty sure. He played off-tank for pretty much all of his career. The last time he played as part of the one winner roster, he was on off-tank. When I was doing my research for this video, I was absolutely lost. I thought maybe there was some sort of mistake with the announcement, but no. The truth is that he is being converted into a support player. Once I came to this realization and got some confirmation, the only thing on my mind was how much of a disaster this could end up being. This guy is literally about to become the next Kuki, and I find it so ironic too that it's the Valiant making this same thing happen again. He gets converted to a support in a matter of months after only knowing tank for his entire career. Did he make this decision on his own, or did the team ask him to do this? Either way, this has Kuki 2.0 written all over it. In what world can we expect him to get good really fast at a completely different position? Support and tank, two different things. There's a good chance he's one of the worst main supports in the league right from day one. In fact, I'm kind of counting on it. I would be completely and utterly shocked if he was halfway decent. No disrespect to Hybe, but this is a tough situation to get thrown into. His inexperience at this position is going to make the lives of everybody around him that much harder. This especially goes for his flex support partner, WYA. He's another player with promise for sure. He's the other guy I'm going to have my eyes on besides Crystal. If I remember correctly, the Charge actually signed him with pretty high hopes. I'm pretty sure at the time they were really excited about him. He was a player the coaches wanted to groom and maybe develop into something. You'd have to imagine he was a potential replacement in the making for Shu because it really did seem like the Charge almost anticipated that Shu was leaving during the offseason. Maybe he could even get some time in a double flex support composition during 2020 just to show us what he's got. But the thing is, he never really got a chance to show off because of visa issues and probably the pandemic too, you'd have to imagine. But since the Charge management took a completely different direction with their coaching this year, there was no longer an interest in him. But I firmly believe he might be capable if the Charge really did regard him that highly. He seems like a good player to take a shot with. He's a very interesting prospect who could prove to be of use if the Valiant are going to remain fully Chinese for the foreseeable future. If he manages to be a bright spot on a team with very minimal expectations, perhaps it would be worth it to give him some sort of contract extension. But of course, I'm probably being overly optimistic because this whole Valiant situation seems like a pretty big mess. Anyway, moving on from the players, now we can wrap it up with the coaches they recruited. The guy who appears to be in charge is JP Cat. He coached the one winner for well over a year, and of course, that's probably the big reason he got recruited in the first place. The Valiant seemed very interested in this whole one winner core type of thing, so you might as well bring him aboard for the ride because he gives a handful of these players a familiar face that they're already used to working with. But the thing is, you once again have to think about that team's lack of relevance for the entirety of 2020. He's kind of on the downward trend. Not a bad coach historically, but one who seems to have fallen behind the loop in recent years. Joining JP Cat is Hiko, formerly known as DMO. This is actually going to be his first coaching gig ever, and usually I would have optimism with somebody like him because he's a former player. But in this case, no, not really. The last time he was involved with the pro scene was September of 2018. He's had absolutely no involvement with any team between then and now. Is that really the coach you want on your team? I'm perfectly fine with former players getting their first coaching gig at this level. but this guy hasn't been a part of the game professionally for 3 years. That seems awfully dodgy if you ask me. I find it very hard to believe they couldn't find a single coach out there who is more experienced. The Valiant coaching situation as a whole does not look all that promising either. I'm fairly worried about it. Given the number of question marks this team already has on their roster, this probably ends up hurting them even more with their potential. On that note, that's basically everything I have to say about my small overview of each player and coach. All the rumors about this roster being weak were completely true, but I feel like that's almost to be expected. Everything happened so suddenly this offseason. The transition to a fully Chinese roster happened mere months before the start of the year. Not only did management have to work quickly to assemble a new team, but they also had to settle for minimum contracts with all of their players and many people likely to reject their offers. They weren't exactly put in a position to succeed. But the thing is, I think they accepted that. From what I've heard, and simply from the looks of it even, this is a throwaway year. They aren't even expecting to win games, I'm pretty sure. This team was assembled just to get through the year. In all honesty, they might get completely wiped by the time the offseason rolls around. They're waiting for Season 5 when the circumstances become a bit better. China has a wealth of talent that people don't even know about, and they surely could assemble a better team in the future. But for now, as brutally honest as this sounds, they'll probably suck. Many people online have compared them to the 2018 Shanghai Dragons, and to be honest with you, they definitely do give off that kind of vibe. They look like a mess as a complete unit, but have a couple of people who could serve as potential bright spots. Combine that with the idea that they'll be lucky to even win a game, and boom, you have Shanghai 2.0. Given the historic levels of bad that they're being compared to, I'm giving the Valiant an F as their offseason grade. I almost gave them a D-, and I know that might not make a lot of sense, but for one simple reason is why I almost did it. The new team was put into a pretty terrible situation where they really didn't have much of a choice. You try getting a minimal roster where some of the best players on the market completely deny you. They did what they could under time constraints and a low budget, so I do give the Valiant management some points there. But regardless of their poor situation, they still became arguably the worst team we have in the league. There's a good chance they'll go winless this year. Asia is full of tough opponents who are noticeably better. If they could play like the Titans or something, maybe they'd be able to squeeze out a win, but even that is probably a stretch. This team went from Dreamer, Adam, Kai, Shax, Agilities, Rain, and Lastro to what looks to be a dumpster fire. It's absolutely sad. Because of the team they assembled, plus the region they'll be playing in, it goes without saying that they'd be lucky to do any better than bottom 3. Realistically, they're probably going to finish in 20th, but I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say 20th through 18th place by some miracle that they play better than expected. There's not much to be excited about with this roster. I like Crystal, I like WIA, but nobody else really grabs my attention, and it's not like they just got a bunch of meh players and coaches either. They have a main tank who hasn't played since 2018, a main support who recently got converted from off tank, and a coach who not only has absolutely zero prior coaching experience, but also hasn't been around the pro scene since 2018. Tell me what gives this team any sort of hope when they're facing those types of potential crippling disadvantages. The Valiant are not going to be good, plain and simple. But the thing is, I can't help but feel bad for the players and the coaches. It's not their fault that the Immortals org is awful, and yet they're still going to be seen as the villains to a lot of people. It really sucks because they're just here because they got offered a job. That's it. So many people online are laughing at them. All you really gotta do is look on Twitter, and it's everywhere. The Immortals are total villains now, and I can't even begin to imagine some of the awful messages these players and coaches might receive simply because they are associated with the Valiant. I know many people have said this already, I'm not the first by any means, but don't go out there and personally attack the players or coaches. Direct your hate towards the Immortals. These new guys are simply doing their jobs. If you don't want the Valiant to win a single game, that's totally fine, but don't take it out on the players, don't be rude to them. I personally hope the Valiant don't do well either this year, but I still do want the players to at least look kind of good in a losing effort, because they were lucky enough to get a shot at the Overwatch League, and they deserve to show us what they've got to get that kind of contract to begin with. I'm sorry to say, but a rough year is ahead of you, LA Valiant. I hope you're ready for the backlash, Immortals. Good luck. You're gonna need it. And with that said, that concludes my all-in-one news video and team preview of the LA Valiant. I'm sure many of you feel the same way as I do, but please make sure to let me know what you think of this new roster down in the comments section. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to stay up to date with all things Overwatch League news related. And as always, thank you all for watching, I really appreciate your support, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.